Welcome to the UFOcast episode 14. And this time we're talking about...
Confetti check, A-OK.
Oh yeah. And I suspect we've got a lot more to talk about on this one than we did our last time.
Yes, and hopefully we won't run out of time. Could you have a synopsis for us, Michael? I want to see how your synopsis writer massacres this one.
Okay. When a shadow operative's wife gives birth to twins, it triggers in Straker's bitter memories of his own marriage to Mary. Just after their honeymoon began, the first UFO attack was made on General Henderson, and Straker was ordered to set up and command Shadow. But it was a secret mission he dare not tell his wife about. As the months pass, Straker spent less and less time at home. Just before the birth of their baby, the final straw came for Mary. She learns that Ed Straker has been seen leaving a girl's flat late at night. I can't remember that bit. And Ed can't explain because the girl was in fact a shadow operative and they were having a vitally important meeting. Yeah, right. Is it the end for Straker's marriage? Mary cares only for the baby. That is indeed perhaps the most massacred of all of the synopses so far.
That is awful.
That is not right.
Well, I think we have to start by saying that this is essentially a prequel to A Question of Priorities, unless you lived in the Grenada region or Canada or Japan, where they were broadcast in the other order, and so you would have seen this first before you got to A Question of Priorities. But for us, watching this, for most people, if you're watching the DVD order, you're watching the Blu-ray order, this comes later. So we already know before we start this episode that Mary and Ed divorce at some point.
Yes.
We know that they have a son, and we know that he dies as a result of Ed not making the right decision, essentially. So this episode is tinged with that from the off. At least I felt that. I don't know. Did you have that in the back of your mind as you started watching this?
Oh, well, it's in my mind all the time whenever I watch him. So yeah, it's what I use as a default excuse for his behaviour. Right,
and so I agree, and that makes the beginning scenes of this episode all the more poignant. Also, the synopsis is wrong because the car accident clearly happened before they got married, because I'm just watching it again and he's gone to visit Henderson.
He goes to meet Henderson, and Henderson says, "I'll be in this for another couple of months."
Yes, he's already in the wheelchair.
It's implied that the meeting needs to take place immediately, and that's why he goes. But we'll cover that when we get to it.
Yes.
So yeah, the synopsis is just.
Yes.
I mean, I can understand why, for shorthand purposes, that's what they've gone with. But
yes.
No. Right.
But
okay.
So I think it gives, because they are, like we said last time, the way that A Question of Priorities was played, whether it was there in the script at all, but the way it was played was the two of them still have affection for each other in the midst of this terrible situation of their son being seriously ill and possibly dying. Yes. And you get this episode and you see them together and they are totally believable. 70s TV kissing aside, they are totally believable as a young couple in love, I felt. What was your perspective on that?
That's completely believable. I've got a few tiny bits of issues with the whole thing.
Right.
I don't know how far you're through the episode, but are you at the wedding scene yet? Or
I'm already past that. I'm already past the wedding scene.
Did you see how many ribbons are on Ed Straker's chest?
Well, I'm on another scene where he's wearing that same uniform and he's got a heck of a lot.
Yeah, I think he's served in every major conflict from 1899 onwards. Right, in order to get that many ribbons. He's got more ribbons than, like, a general.
He's got the same amount of ribbons as Arnold Rimmer on his...
Yes, that is completely correct. But I do like the fact that apart from the fact that they're clearly drink driving, I do like the fact that Ed Straker gets a chance to act as someone who isn't as buttoned up, somebody fine, somebody all right, somebody not as damaged. Because at the wedding scenes, he's clearly happy.
Yes, and he at that point, he clearly thinks that that he can have a marriage and build Shadow. Because the whole episode is about that, really, isn't it? It's about the fact that she knows that she's married a colonel in the military intelligence, right?
Yeah.
That's what she knows, and so for her, she clearly goes into it with an element of going, my husband will not be able to tell me certain things about what he does.
Yeah, but also she thinks it's military intelligence, and she's got a pretty good idea of the things that would be. Now, that would either be some secrets of, he can't say what he did at work.
Yeah.
Right. But if he's working at somewhere like GCHQ, he would need, logically, he would do set hours and other people would be under him. Right?
Yes.
Or if he was working at somewhere like Bletchley, he'd be doing longer hours, but he would definitely come home. Right.
Yes.
So they're your basic two choices, unless he goes on missions and he's actually a spy in a kind of a True Lies kind of a way.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And they're your basic three choices.
Yep. And so obviously what he's doing is sort of beyond the parameters of that.
Yes. So she can't figure out what it is. And also, the thing that I don't see in this, because it's implied that the building above the Shadow HQ is going to be a tax office rather than a film studio.
Well, no, I think because they do talk about, they mention the film studio as well in the building of it, and but
at no point does he get to say that he is masquerading as a film producer.
Well, and so this was one of the things that came out of this for me was thinking, had it not all gone wrong for their marriage, he would still have had to have publicly left the military and become a film producer.
Yes.
So how would that have gone down with Mary? Because he would then have been in the position of working ridiculous hours as a film producer. I mean, obviously, some film producers do work ridiculous hours. But yes, how would he have squared that with her then?
I still think that it's an allegory, or not an allegory. It's a direct parallel with Jerry Anderson and his life. And obviously, Jerry Anderson was not defending the Earth against aliens, and if he was, well done. But he was working extremely long hours and was controlling over everyone and things like that. So.
Yes, and his marriage eventually broke down. So
eventually, yeah.
Yes, not at this point, but it was.
No, but during, I think it was Space 1999.
Yes, and it was from the Chris Bentley's book. There's a little bit about the fact that Jerry and Sylvia were not having the best of
things were strained.
At this point. Yeah. Things were strained. Yes. Oh, I suppose yes. So I suppose there is a reflection of that in this.
It's not really any of our business because we're talking about the fictional world.
No, of course
he
not.
He is a film TV producer, and he's on the screen with us, and he's in an Anderson production.
Yes.
So yeah, there are some things worthy of mention. I've just noticed in the wedding scene on the wall there is one of the drawings of Don Quixote, which I think's been put there on purpose because he's tilting at windmills. Or am I now reading too much into it? So yeah, they are having fun together. They are having fun. They're getting married. They've been married. Now, sorry, we've skipped over something that put my back up immediately at the beginning of the episode. And it is such a small, pointless point, but it shows the difference between then and now.
Okay.
The guy says, "Did you have a boy or a girl? I had twins." Yes, but what are they? Right? That annoys. He's giving out cigars in the incredibly underground secret area, right? And he's giving out more cigars than could be like illegally purchased by anyone. It's ridiculous. He's got hundreds. Everyone's got a cigar, right? But the thing that annoys me is you clearly didn't attend the same birthing classes that either you or I went to, right? Because the guy says, "Oh, she was only in a couple of minutes. Well, I didn't know a cesarean was so quick." Now, he obviously didn't sit through any of the videos or was forced to learn all about what to do in case there's a cesarean or anything like that. because it's the 70s.
Yes. Yes, and the expectations upon men and being present at births and things. I mean, the fact that he was even there is potentially quite progressive for the time, I suspect.
True.
So, I mean, so inside baseball, I am one of 4, and there's my older brother, and then there's my twin sisters, who are younger.
Right. Are they identical?
No, they're not identical. And my mother only found out that there was going to be 2 of them with a week to go.
Wow.
That's a story for another time. But one of them was born by cesarean, so I should ask my dad what it was like.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether he was present, actually. But
yeah, so that would have been, what, the 80s?
That was mid-80s, yes. Yes.
Right.
When
this is set?
Potentially. Well, no, this is not set. This is set in. This is set contemporarily, isn't it? Because this is about. The future bit with all the cigars. You're right. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. You're right.
Yeah. Well, my daughter was, and it was very different.
Yep.
To how the man describes it.
Yes. My daughter was born naturally, so I haven't experienced the wonders of a cesarean section. Yes.
Well, it's Anyway, crashing on. That's not what we're here to discuss.
But there is more to say about. Well, let's talk. We've brought it up. Let's talk about it now, and it's appropriate because we are recording this the day after the latest royal baby was born, and Kate Middleton. Well, she's not Kate Middleton anymore, is she? Kate appeared
the next queen.
Yes, very soon after. Made up, looking beautiful. With a dress on, and 5 hours after the birth?
I actually thought that was old footage from the last time someone was born.
And it's like, no, this is, and you just wonder how much discomfort she was in having to kind of go through that.
I know she's a young mother, and people are meant to bounce back, but seriously, have a day off.
So the reason I bring that up is that this episode is great. Because she looks like she's just given birth when we see her after she's given birth to John at the end of the story. She's been made up to look like she's properly knackered out, because she would have been after her first labour.
And her fall down the stairs.
And the fall down the stairs. And I just really appreciated that, because you don't really get that in drama very often. Often the way that pregnancy and birth and everything are treated is totally inaccurate, largely because it's men making the programs. And I just really appreciated that aspect of it, going, well, no, actually, no, she does look like she's just given birth. All fair play to the makeup artist and whoever made that sort of directorial decision to do that.
No, it makes complete sense, and I'm pleased. Yeah. Apart from the fact that there are many major themes occurring in this episode, things like it's basically adventures in interior design, because he's having his house decorated at the same time they're decorating Shadow's base, and there are other themes that we can completely ignore, like it's not just the loss of the marriage, but it's the loss of the friendship, because he's really good mates with Henderson in this, which is just as a weird surprise all the way through. Because Henderson's like, yeah, I'll be your boss, I'll look after your money for you, and I'm going to put you forward as the head of Shadow, and it'll all be all right. And then every time we see him in 10 years later, he's just bitter and old.
Which is interesting, because we'd speculated thus far that the reason that Henderson and Straker fell out was because the accident meant that Henderson couldn't become head of Shadow. And actually, this story paints a completely different picture. So whether it is just upon reflection, whether it is on being bored by his job at the International Astrophysical Commission that turns Henderson bitter, or whether there's just another untold story somewhere in the 10 years between this and when UFO begins.
Or perhaps, because it's implied by Henderson, what you need in this job is the love of a good woman, which is a weird thing for him to say it, and he says it with such poignancy, and he had it once and it's left, so perhaps, or he's still got it and he wishes he didn't have it, or perhaps he doesn't have a good woman, he just has a woman, and there's lots of other things that could be read into that statement.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe you could see it as I mean, we never see Henderson's private life, but maybe Henderson has managed to keep a private life going, and he's therefore critical of Straker for
messing it up, yeah.
Either being the person or more becoming the person that he is by the time we get to UFO proper, that he has thrown himself wholeheartedly into this. And we know from the end of this, we know from A Question of Priorities that he is prepared to sacrifice everything for Shadow. And it's what makes him such a tragic figure.
True. So Henderson sends him to the United Nations and messes up his wedding, his honeymoon. She doesn't go on the honeymoon by herself, which I find weird, because the tickets have already bought.
Yeah,
and he should have just caught her up, so that's fine. But so anyway, he has to go to the UN where he's surrounded by, well, let's call them alumni, and he has a chat, and it's very similar again to some doppelganger stuff.
Talking of the UN building, have you ever seen the UN building from that angle?
No.
Because it's almost always shot from kind of street level looking up.
Which is how I've seen it, yeah.
In like Danger Man and then on the news. And it was a totally surprising... I mean, and presumably not shot for this... One would assume they took some library footage and put it into the episode.
Not only do I think it's library footage, but I think it's also used that same shot, because the tugboat goes past, in the 1966 Batman movie. I'm going to check, because I'm pretty sure that it's the same shot near the end when they're all trying to sort out the delegates back into their original languages, because they've all been dehydrated.
I've not seen the movie of which you speak. So
it's a glorious, glorious thing. It truly is.
Yeah.
So, do you have any more? Yes.
Well, no, there's lots more to say about this episode, and we will talk for as long as we can. No, I keep bashing my pop shield. No opening title sequence.
Without question, yes.
Just goes straight in. And there's only one other episode of UFO that does that, which we will come to in quite a number of weeks, I think. So that already sets up that this is a different episode.
It is UFO light. I mean, there are no actual UFOs in it. They're an overriding menace, and that's the whole purpose for setting up the plot. But it does have more of I've done the whole Torchwood parallel thing, but it does have a feeling of just their everyday life. And I know that the guy who played Ed Straker was against seeing people's personal lives, but it is such a strong episode that it's just needed.
It's very strong, but you do think that the presence of the aliens is a looming threat over the episode.
Yes.
And part of me thinks it would have been interesting to have, well, what happened when a UFO came in 1970? Because obviously Shadow wasn't built yet, and so it would have been interesting to have perhaps a scene of going, there's been another UFO sighting, it's come down, here's some people have gone missing, here's another reason for... And I suppose you do have that in the scene with Monsieur Duval, where he says, I hope that your daughter is not the one that's going to be
but his persuasive argument is, they want our women. And that's possibly the most American thing in the whole programme.
That had not occurred to me. Yes, he specifically says I suppose because he knows that the guy has daughters. Yeah,
you've got 3 daughters, so the aliens are after them. Yeah. They are.
Yeah. Yeah. But obviously it was written that way. I mean, because it could have equally been written, well, you've got a son. Are the aliens after your kid? Yeah. So
could have been non-specific and just gone children. You've got children, haven't you? Yes.
Yep.
Very, very the odd little tweak, but he made it more personal, and I can see. Yeah. So,
and then we have Straker's non-drinking.
Now, I've got a question about that.
Yeah.
It's implied that when I was watching it the first time round, that Straker had a drink problem and gave it up because of the stress. That was my reading of it. But in this, she tries to give him a drink to celebrate that she's pregnant.
Yes.
And his reaction is, I don't drink. So did he have a drink problem much earlier?
Well, then obviously
I don't drink a lot.
He drinks at the wedding as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's possibly one of those things where
because
it wasn't
Alex even
properly
says,
fleshed out.
"Why are you giving me this to drink?" And he's like, "Oh, what are we drinking to? We're drinking to champagne. Not we're drinking champagne, we're drinking to champagne," because basically Alec's just a lush and just wants to get drunk. And not only is Alec at the wedding, right, but later on, Alec is the first person hired to be part of Shadow.
Yeah.
So he's already been in the episode. So basically it's jobs for his mates.
Yes, it is. It is. But again, and we talked about this before. It shows the history of friendship, the depth of friendship that these two men have. They're presumably colleagues in some previous military escapade. They're mates. It makes what happens with Straker's son later or earlier, depending on which order you're watching these episodes in. It makes it all the more tragic when we see this history here of how far back that they go, and there's that moment in the office where Straker has this very human moment of I'm going to tell her she needs to know, and it's basically that moment is his chance to save his marriage, really, isn't it? Because he wants to do it, and then Freeman says, "You can't tell her," and for all the right reasons, because he basically says, I mean, did you ever watch Alias?
No, but I'm aware of it.
So I saw like the first few episodes of it, and it's the same dilemma. She basically wants to tell her boyfriend that she's working for whichever secret service she's working for. She does, and then comes back and finds him dead in the shower because they've bumped him off. I mean, it turns out she's working for she thinks she's. Oh,
yeah, it's a CIA within a CIA.
She
so
thinks
it's
she's
like an
CIA,
anti-CIA,
but she's not.
Yeah.
But there's that whole thing of like if and basically this is what Freeman says to Straker. You know what our security guys are like. If you tell her, there will be consequences, and he basically goes with that, and understandably so. Obviously, the thing he has to do to save his marriage is quit.
True.
But obviously, but
how
Henderson has
much?
given him
How
that
much
ultimatum
could he
earlier
tell
on.
her? How much could he tell her? Because his major mistake, apart from the fact that it's a whole. I mean, let's face it, it's the 70s, and the person who causes the trouble is the mother-in-law, because she's the one who has him followed, which clearly means that the shadow security people are rubbish, because they should have spotted someone following their boss.
Well, and also, what private detective would take that job? Like,
yeah,
like you wouldn't, would you? You get employed by somebody to follow a guy because, and they tell you up front, we think he's sleeping around, and then you find out who the person is you've been asked to follow, and you go, well, he's a colonel in the military intelligence. I'm not going to follow this guy. And so that I suppose that is for me the one weak element of the plotting of it.
Unless he's a really bad detective, and he's just kind of following someone when they get in the car and he went, I'll just follow this person, haven't done any research, haven't bothered.
Or he needs the money.
Stopped off, and I need the money. Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
So he's quite seedy.
He does sit there in the car, kind of tutting at his watch, kind of going, how long is this job taking?
Yeah.
So, but yes, you're right. It's the mother-in-law trope.
Okay, right. Okay, now, because we're pushed for time and we might miss bits out, I need to discuss the massive elephant in the room that is at the centre of this episode.
Okay.
And it's the slap and the fall down the stairs.
Right.
Right, now, obviously, we're, 2018 men, and we like to think of ourselves as vaguely evolved, right?
Right.
But, does it work narratively? Because it's pointless even at this point saying, oh, well, we're against people slapping each other in a relationship, right? That goes without saying, or at least it should.
It should do, yes.
It should do, right? Now, there's the whole thing in TV drama, and I hate using the word trope, so I didn't, where if someone's hysterical, and we all know the origin of the word hysterical, so that makes it even worse.
Yes.
If someone is, rabbit ears, hysterical, then they get slapped, because obviously that helps. In real life, it doesn't, and it wouldn't, because they'd just get more and more hysterical, and then they'd get angry about being slapped and would be hysterical. But that's one of the things that's a recurring theme in TV and film drama for decades before this. And I know it still sort of goes on in soaps and things like that. But,
I mean, it's such a trope that it's made fun of in Airplane, isn't it? There's the whole everybody in the plane queues up to slap her.
Yes,
and that shows how ingrained it is. But like as you say, it's for us, it's a very shocking moment because I certainly didn't expect it, and I'd seen this episode before, watching it this time, but I'd forgotten that it came to that. Just because, well, Straker's for all his damagedness, Straker's the good guy, and to have him slap his wife, is hard. It's difficult to watch.
And if you listen to, because I tend to listen to the episodes before we review them, and if you listen to the words he's actually saying during that fight, he's about to tell her all about Shadow. He's literally going, right, I'm going to save my marriage, I'm going to tell you, and I don't care what the consequences are.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to tell you something that's mental about flying saucers and little green men. Although I did misread the cover of the book she was reading as something like Alien Bodies, but it wasn't. It was written by something. It was the name of the author, Alan Bodess or something. I couldn't quite zoom in enough, and that was the author's name. And I was like, oh my god, she's reading sci-fi. She's actually open to the idea of aliens, and it's such a con as a program. And I thought that was brilliant. And then I realised I'm really too close to this now and need to step back just a touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just seeing the scene where he's being followed, and it's such such an Anderson car park, isn't it? With the ramp that goes down in a spiral.
Oh yeah.
That feels like something out of an Anderson futuristic,
or something out of Get Carter, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a difficult.
You know when they go down in the lift, right? So yeah, it is a difficult one. I don't know how I feel about it because it's an important part of the plot. It is the disintegration of the marriage, and we're getting to see it, and it's as powerful as you won't remember this either. The Christmas episode of EastEnders with Angie and Den slapping each other and giving each other divorce papers on the stairs. It's that
I don't remember it, but it's one of the famous things about EastEnders. If you don't know anything else about EastEnders, you know about Den and Angie Watts.
Yeah,
and you know what was it? Was it the Christmas Eve episode?
No, it was the Christmas Day episode.
Christmas Day episode,
I think, but I could be wrong. I so often am.
No, I think you're probably right.
But it was massive at the time, and perhaps that's the argument against this episode. This episode is UFO does soap, and we can live with that.
Well, I don't think it's soap, because the thing about soap is it's basically lots of interweaving personal stories that just go on and on and on in a particular community. That's kind of how soap works. And this is very much this is Straker and Mary's relationship under a microscope. It's a drama about the two of them.
Yes.
And so I don't think it's soap, but it obviously is. It is UFO doing a personal story that is less about the UFO stuff.
Yeah, and that I think it's a wise choice, and it's a wise decision to put this episode in. I do. It just works for me.
I think we said before that Straker is the heart of the show.
Yeah,
a very weird heart of a show, and it's what makes UFO the curiosity that it is. But this just it makes him more human. It makes him more human. You realise why he's so damaged, and
well, this is the damage actually happening, isn't it?
Yes, the slap aside, you have sympathy for him. I mean, I have a huge deal of sympathy for her as well. And we've talked about this, haven't we? That one of the reasons that our podcast is pushed for time on occasions like this is because we're married. And
true, yeah.
And my relationship with my wife has to come first.
Yes.
Because I take the vows that I made to her very seriously, as I'm sure do you. And there have been times during this whole project where we haven't been able to record because the UFOcast is less important than me being married to my wife and you being married to yours. Right?
Yes. That is, yes.
And this episode is basically the other way around, isn't it? It's Ed Straker going, I love this woman, and I've married her, and we're building a house together, we're building a family together. But secretly, he has this other thing which is much more important to him, and that is defending the Earth from UFOs. And that essentially is what makes him the tragic figure that he is, I think.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. But he has the military mindset, and that's kind of what works. For this story, anyway.
Yes,
which is a bit sad.
I suppose every military person has to contend with this. You have people being deployed to conflict zones and leaving wives behind. The life of a military wife, as I understand it, is a very particular experience, and so there are plenty of people that make it work. I just know that I couldn't do it.
No. No, neither of us are cut out to be military wives, but I completely understand what you're saying. Yes. I had a dream the other night, and I just need to say it at this point. In fact, I don't need to say it at all at this point. I could save it for another episode, but it was Big Finish had decided to bring back, because they're bringing back all sorts of things. They decided to bring back UFO, but with because obviously the cast is a bit depleted at the moment, and it was UFO 2020, and it was basically the pitch was in 1990 the aliens stopped coming, now they're coming back.
Right.
And they have to reform Shadow, and they were going to get Dave Cumberbatch's mother as the new head of Shadow to try and rebuild one, and I just had this really nice thought, and I was sort of half asleep, going, I should be writing this down. I really should be writing this down. And then it was like gone. So all the rest of it, all the intricate plots and everything, gone, missing. They're not in my head. But the UFO 2020 was definitely in my head for a good evening, and I just would love to pitch that at some point.
Yes.
Yes. So
I have a question
that is a
for
digression.
you, Michael.
Yes, please feel free.
So I've just got to the bit in the episode where the doctor says to him, I'm going to have to perform a C-section.
Yes.
And he says to the doctor, if you have to choose between my wife and the baby, and the doctor says, I understand.
Have you
what is he asking the doctor to do at that point?
Oh, right, yeah, no. Did you not have this? Have you not had this discussion? He's saying save the wife.
Well, that was my assumption. That was what I was.
Because he's not met the child. Save the wife, because he loves her.
Yeah, well, that was what I assumed, but.
But the doctor just goes, "Yes, I understand," and you're like, "No,
understand.
he hasn't actually said the statement. He could be like, "No, save the child."
Save the child.
Save the wife. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't finish the conversation. The doctor could go off and go, "I've saved your child," and it would
he was like, "I wanted you to save my wife."
Yeah, save the wife. Look, I'll make it really obvious. Wife. Yeah. So you are right. I mean, it's implied it's the wife, but you just don't know. Yes. It could be a very thick doctor.
Yeah.
It's quite a dangerous thing. You must follow through on conversations.
Yes.
I'm just. Do you have any notes or?
No,
I'm scanning through mine.
Well, it's just it's this final moment of she was going to leave him. She fell down the stairs and went into labour and had the baby. Again, there is this fight. He basically gets another chance. He gets another chance to save his marriage, and then she wakes up from the cesarean and he's gone, and that's basically the line drawn under it, isn't it?
Yes.
It's basically saying no, this is it. This is how it ends. their marriage is broken and irretrievable, and we know, however many further down the line.
From her point of view, he is someone who gets divorced from her, abandons his son, obviously gets a really bad lawyer. We've discussed that, so he never gets to see him very much. And then he has a midlife crisis and opens up a film studio.
Yeah.
With funds that we've no idea where they came from. Because he obviously had a really bad divorce lawyer. So if she suddenly suspects he's got enough money to open a film studio, she'll be like, well, where did that money come from?
Yeah.
And that's not it. But that's us being pedantic. I mean, we are Doctor Who fans, we're UFO fans. Being pedantic, does it always have to come naturally? I don't know. Right. I'm just having a quick scan of my notes.
I think our conclusion is that that last week was one of the worst episodes of UFO.
Yes.
Certainly one of the dullest episodes of UFO, and this is a really, really strong piece of drama. It's not typical UFO. It's not what you'd want every week because of the lack of UFOs, but it is a really important and powerful episode of the show.
Yeah, and it proves that the Anderson stable can produce really good character-driven drama.
Yes.
Which without any need for effects or model shots or anything else. So if you were going to pay for The Protectors, let's say that, to be made, and you knew they could produce something like this, you wouldn't feel badly about it. You'd just go, yeah, fair enough. They can do it. They've proven it. They don't have to rely on the tricks of the trade because they understand people and they can film it. Off you go.
Yeah.
So that's a perfectly good reading of it. It's also nice to see Alec in not a different light, but in a more evolved light. He's not leering after people. It's as if he grows into that.
Yes.
He's actually a decent friend.
Yep.
Yeah, but he's not so much of a friend that he finds out that he's going to have his friend's going to have a son, and it becomes a surprise to him. It's like, what do you mean, a son? And it's like, whoa. Now, for me, the whole thing that falls down is the car park, the training thing. Clearly, they could be training people in Shadow HQ because it's there, or somewhere else, a military base. Meeting people in car parks is just a narrative MacGuffin, and that is a weak point for me. And I know sometimes as a writer you've got to let things go so that they fit, but that's fine. So I'm putting my hands up and saying I've nothing else to say apart from the fact that you're right. It's a great story, a great episode, but we don't want any more of it. Yeah. We want a big flying saucers and some big decisions being made. And probably won't happen.
We have some. With the flying saucers are back. Well, a flying saucer is back next time. With all that said, it's time for Anderson Watch. There's a lot to get through, so I'm just going to whip through them. And Michael, you can interject if you have come up with any of these people.
Right.
In fact, no. Why don't I just say who did you spot, right. And then we'll go from there.
The only person, right? It was at the meeting room. The bit that looked like Doppelganger. And the person who I thought was the person who you adore in lots of episodes of Doctor Who as nervous scientist man wasn't him. It was actually the bloke out of Render Ghost, so I got that wrong. Who was the friend of Mr. Mika, so who was also the warlord in Doctor Who, but that's not important. What is important is that the person who I recognised was the Black Guardian.
Well, you didn't recognise the Black Guardian.
I didn't.
He wasn't. No.
Well, whose voice was that then?
Who did you think was the Black Guardian?
The British representative.
Oh, the English delegate. I suppose he does sound a bit like Valentine Dial. No.
Yeah, I was going off voices completely, and that's who I'd recognised. So, right, what I'm basically saying is, over to you. I know nothing.
Right. Well, we will rattle through these as fast as we can. So we'll start with Anderson Watch. A brief appearance from Shane Rimmer again. He of Thunderbird's fame, who's already appeared in UFO in the first episode as a pilot. He's the CIA agent who checks Straker's case.
Yes.
I mean, it's possible that they could have been the same character. Then you have the French delegate, played by a chap called Jeffrey Segal, or Segal, who appears in an episode of The Protectors. And then you have Gordon Stern, who is the German delegate, who will appear once again in Reflections in the Water, which we will come to towards the end of UFO. Now, Gordon Stern is the one actor who ties together Anderson and Doctor Who and The Prisoner, in that he had a brief appearance in the John Pertwee story, The Ambassadors of Death, also playing a German called Heldorf.
Right.
And then he plays a bystander in the Prisoner episode Living in Harmony.
Which I do like.
Yes. And he was one of those, he was like, you have a vaguely familiar face. There's one more person to talk about in Anderson Watch. We'll come back to him at the very end. So let's quickly run on with Prisoner Watch. So Michael Nightingale, who was Mary's father, plays the night supervisor in Dance of the Dead. I think he had slightly more hair, or possibly it was slightly darker, a few years preceding. So that's Prisoner Watch done. So Doctor Who Watch, there are, apart from Gordon Stern, who we've already done, there are 2 other delegates at the conference who were in Doctor Who. So the English delegate was an actor called Jack May. I don't know whether that name means anything to you.
Go on.
He is probably more famous in science fiction circles for playing the waiter at the restaurant at the end of the universe the TV version of Hitchhiker's Guide.
No, sir, your monkey has got it right.
Yes. In Doctor Who, he was Hermac in The Space Pirates. One of those sadly mostly missing stories. There's like one episode of it left.
I was just about to say, I'm sure I've seen one.
Yes. It's generally regarded as not being a very good story. I quite enjoy it. But
it's
anyway,
nice to listen to.
So he was in that. Listeners will know him, and this is where I first came across him, as Nelson Gabriel in The Archers, the long-running British radio soap.
Of course.
The other delegate, the American delegate, played by Alan Tilvan.
Right, where do we know him?
He was Forrester in Planet of Giants. So he was the bad guy developing the insecticide, which was killing everything in the garden that the Doctor and his companions were miniaturized in.
Good old-fashioned black and white Doctor Who.
Yes, less moustache, less glasses. And then the other 2 Doctor Who people we need to talk about are Donald Pelmere, who played the estate agent, so it was a blink and you'll miss him.
Right.
Was Professor Rubish in The Time Warrior. And I had to go back and watch it again and go, yes, of course, Professor Rubish. And then the hotel clerk, who signs them in at the desk on honeymoon, was played by Geoffrey Hinsliff, who Tom Baker viewers will remember from The Image of the Fendal as Jack Tyler, and Fisk in Nightmare of Eden, who at one point calls his colleague Fisk because he's forgotten his name.
Which, happens in real life, so it's just an extra level of verisimilitude.
Yes. And before we wrap up and say goodbye, because we really do need to say goodbye, because I need to go to bed, did you spot the doctor who does the cesarean? Did he seem at all familiar to you, Michael?
No, but my rewatch was on a phone.
So he was played by an actor called Tom Oliver.
Right.
Who will appear again in The Sound of Silence, which is a few episodes of UFO down the line. But he's most famous for playing Lou in Neighbours.
He's Lou Carpenter. I've actually written that on my notes. You're so right. No, I'm a huge fan. He's in ABBA the movie. Right? Hang on. I was trying to read my notes going, why does it say Lou Carpenter and ABBA? Right? Because I'd written these notes some time ago and I was going, why the hell does it say that? Why have I written the word Lou Carpenter here? And I'm thinking, that makes no sense. I'd written in the corners, but yes, it's Lou. He's fantastic.
Because what viewers of Neighbours probably don't know is that he's British and he started his career in the UK, emigrated to Australia, and then we all know him as Lou from Neighbours. But he's actually briefly in UFO for a couple of episodes. I think later in The Sound of Silence he's playing a shadow operative. So again, did they recruit him? That must. Or
does he have a brother?
Well, yeah, that must have been difficult for Straker. The guy who delivered your now dead son works for you at Shadow.
But in all
Maybe
fairness,
not.
Straker wouldn't bother remembering.
Anyway.
He's brilliant in ABBA the movie, by the way. He really is.
Is he? Okay. Well, I will take your word for that,
trust
Michael.
me on that one. It's fine.
Do we have anything more to say, or
I
shall
think
we wrap
the
up?
only thing we need to say is good night to everyone.
Yes, and next time we'll be looking at the episode ESP.
Which I do like.
Yes. So until then,
be seeing
you. You have been listening to the UFOcast with me, Luke from Tmudwup.
And me, Michael, from the Tin Dog Podcast.
Please get in touch with the show. Let us know what you think and any feedback you might have at ufocast@yahoo.com.
Or on Twitter at UFO_cast. Available on Stitcher and iTunes.